Well, good day to you. It is the winter solstice of 2020. If you're living in the northern hemisphere, if you're of course living in Australia, you're the lucky ones. It's the summer solstice, so you can go out and bask in the glow of the summertime. Now, if this is your first time ever listening to Search for Signs, I do want to welcome and thank you. We are going to go through a little brief description here, but let me just tell you this real quick. I am bringing on a friend of mine, Betsy Whitfill, who did a video not too long ago. And it seemed like people really liked it because she got all thumbs up and no thumbs down, and I usually get a few thumbs down, so you must like her better than me. No, I'm just kidding. No, she brings a very unique perspective to this information, and I want to keep bringing her on and some other people on and get some different perspectives on this wonderful story. But anyway, real quick, if this is your first time ever listening to Search for Signs, I want to thank you and welcome you. We have over 300 videos like this one where we talk about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. We take a deeper look at why are the Masters returning now to the everyday world and what does it mean for you, me, and everybody on this planet. We tie it into the current events of the time, and then we touch on the many miracle signs that have been going on all around the world in all walks of life and all religious faiths. And what does it mean? Does it mean what Benjamin Creme, who started talking about this information and brought this information initially to the public, does it mean what he said 40 some odd years ago, that the one awaited by all the world's religions, who made a promise to each religious group to come back at some point, is already here, living in a modern city, and has been since July 19th, 1977. And, take it one step further, is actually on TV now, speaking to tens of millions of people at a time, but yet totally unrecognized as anything but just an ordinary person who's deeply concerned about the many problems that face humanity today. Now, we also take a look at the priorities of Maitreya. The biggest priority Maitreya talks about is the need that humanity must create peace. Our very survival depends upon it. If we do not, we are jeopardizing our future, our children's future, and their children's future, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth. So it's very important that we do something about this. Now, the way Maitreya puts it, he says, without sharing, there could be no justice. Without justice, there could be no peace. Without peace, there could be no future for humanity. So the first part, sharing, we talk about it quite a bit. The model that we can look at in terms of how it might possibly work is the Marshall Plan that happened right after World War II. When the United States saw that if they didn't do something with Europe, they didn't help Europe out right after World War II, it could go right down the toilet. And it would probably bring the whole world with it. And so they took the excesses that they had and gave it freely to Western Europe. And then once Western Europe's infrastructure started to rebuild itself, the Europeans got back on their feet. They could then turn around and gave their excesses back as payment for what they initially took. The initial result of it was incredible. The long-term effect of it was darn near miraculous. So the initial effect of the principle sharing is it rebuilt Europe. The European people were able to get back on their feet. All the social unrest stopped and so forth because people had food and clothing and their needs were taken care of. It also created an economic boom in the United States not long after that. But the long-term effect is still being felt today. The United States, those Western European nations that they shared with, they trust one another better than any of the other nations on this planet. So if you can't see it as verifiable proof that sharing does create peace, I don't know what else to tell you. But Maitreya is talking about doing this on a global scale. So that's what the principle of sharing is. So we talk more about that too. And if you have questions about that, we can talk about it. Now, I do want to say this real quick before I get into the interview with Betsy. Two things. One, there were some questions I needed to cover in this video, and I don't want the video to get too long. So I will cover the questions in the next video, I promise, okay? Two, I've noticed in my YouTube analytics that there have been quite a bit of people from the Philippines that have been starting to listen to this channel. And I do want to thank you, give you a shout out. Also let you know that I've actually been to the Philippines a couple times. Love the Filipino people, love the landscape, love the culture. Have not tried balut yet. And if you're from the Philippines, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not brave enough to do that yet. But I have been bribed $100. So the next time I go, I have $100 waiting for me if I'm just willing to eat balut. So I'll have to put that up on video. But anyway, I want to say this, and this is just for those from the Philippines who are listening. what I've known about the Filipino people is the times that I've been there is you as a people have more of a sense of family community than any other community on this planet. Maybe, I'm just suggesting this to you, maybe you guys could show us how it's done. Can you show us how those of us who don't live life like that, let's say in America, who live total separate lives, maybe you can show us how it's done, how to live as a family and as a family community, really. And with maybe that can change things. Maybe that's something that we can learn from you as a people. So anyway, just putting it out there. Now, again, I'm bringing on Betsy Whitfill to come and talk to us, give her perspective on this information. So without further ado, I want to invite Betsy Whitfill to come and talk to us. So anyway,
all right, are you there?
Here she is.
I am.
All right. Well, back by popular demand, we have Ms. Betsy Whitfill from Texas. Don't let the accent fool you. She is from New Jersey, so, she'll let you have it when she needs to.
I understand Wild Bill Hickok was also from New Jersey, which was a terrible shock to me.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So in the last video that I recorded, we talked about your many experiences with the masters, your dream experiences and so forth. This video we're going to talk a little bit more about things that are happening in and around the world today. Politics, the new Aquarian age, which is coming, which we've been talking about. You can add some more to that. And then the thing that I'm interested, you were going to mention, and maybe we can start off with this, the bright star that's supposed to shine in the sky tonight. We're recording this on the 21st of December, 2020. So there was supposed to be a astrological event, or astronomy. Is that right? Not
both.
It's
both. Yeah.
So maybe you could talk about that, and we can get into the other things. How about that, Betsy? So
sounds good. Yeah, this is the big news of the day. Is that just before sunset, people will be able to see the conjunction of the planet Saturn and the planet Jupiter conjoined together in the sky, in the western sky, just an hour after sunset, at least here in the U.S. And it's not only an astrological phenomena, but it is apparently historic in its rarity. And I understand, I was reading an article about it in the Wall Street Journal this morning even, and, they had a little report by an astronomer who said that it was 1623 when the last close conjunction had occurred. So, from a strictly scientific astronomical standpoint, well, it's an event, but so many people have begun to give it significance beyond just an astronomical event, and it's apparently saturated the consciousness of many, many people who are expecting something new to happen. And many of them say this is the beginning of the Age of Aquarius. I'm old enough to remember the Broadway shows about Aquarius, such as Hair and the great song, This is the Age of Aquarius, and the moon is in the seventh house. So I expect maybe the songs will be played, if not today, then maybe in the future. Anyway, people are expecting something new and wonderful to come from this astronomical event. Now, the astrologers interpret this signature, the conjunction, the bringing together of these two planets in the birth chart as a new start. And they call it a new start lifetime if it's in the birth chart. But in the heavens, and in a what's happening now sort of way, it has really saturated the public's consciousness with the fact that this is a new start period. So we know also that it is happening in the constellation Aquarius. So the logical conclusion is that this is the beginning of the Age of Aquarius, which we know is a process that's been going on, I think, since 1625, and will, granted, as Creme has already said, right about now, the balance between the old age and the new age energies is pretty much heavily weighted now on the Aquarian side. So the energies of Aquarius are very important in the consciousness now because it emphasizes, those energies emphasize what they call synthesis and inspire brotherhood. So this is what people are expecting tonight to be the acme, the apex of this particular conjunction. And of course, it happens on the solstice, the beginning of winter, and also just forward of Christmas, which is, and the holidays of many religions. So this is apparently for many, many, many people, this is a significant day even, and relates, as we are talking, to the constellation Aquarius. And so it might be useful to try and think about what that means for everyday people and for our world.
Now, will these two planets conjoin for very long, or is it just for tonight and then that's it? Or?
Well, it's been a process, a conjoining that's been getting closer and closer for some weeks now, and then of course you'll have the let's say 0 degree conjunction now, but the conjunction will still be bright and up there for weeks to come, because as they then separate in their different orbits, the junction will become wider and wider, and so it will eventually fade from public consciousness, I'm sure.
I know my mom's been really excited about it. It's her birthday today too. That always makes it very interesting for her. But I did want to add something to this, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I was in the process of recording a video earlier today and just ran out of time before I'm going to put yours up first because this is more pertinent to what we're talking about today. But Ben's master talked about the winter solstice in terms of how to live life. And it's written in The Joy of Living, which is one of the articles that he wrote back when my grandfather would say, when Hector was a pup. So it's a long time ago. But he said, each winter the sun sets earlier and earlier until on the shortest day we see it, if at all, for but a few brief hours. Such is the reality of our planetary life. However, experience has taught us that without fail the days will gradually lengthen, and the blossom of spring and the warmth of summer will return once more, bringing us renewed hope and joy in living. So, it's a metaphor, I think, for the way that we should live our life in terms of accepting the blows and the gifts of life, Yes. And just because we're having a good year this year, next year might not be so good.
Yes. Well,
let me be the person, and the other way around too. It's the other way too,
That's true. That's true. And one of the gifts of this particular dark part of the year is that we turn inward, we light lights, we turn inward, we look for the company of like minds or family, and that is where we get our comfort at this time of the year, because it's dark for so many people, and it just seems appropriate that Christmas would be at this time of the year also, since Jesus was in the biblical terms born in a cave, and of course, as Benjamin Creme always says, this is when the light of the Christ consciousness awakens in the cave of the human heart.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Interesting. Mm-hmm. I was talking about that very thing, actually, in the video that I didn't actually save. In different ways, talking about the different process that we all have to go through in order to become a perfected master, but that being the first expansion of consciousness. So now, does this relate to, I already know the answer to this, but most people who are listening probably don't. Does this relate to Maitreya's star that appeared a few years ago around the time of Christmas?
Well, it probably physically doesn't, because these are two planets, and Maitreya's star is a space craft, actually, which I think as it appeared in, was it '08 the first time, and it was in December, and so it was like a Christmas star, like the Star of Bethlehem at the time. And of course, that particular occurrence was, at least for me, much more important, if you will, because it was intended, those spacecrafts are intended to look like stars, and they announced the presence in the world of the teacher for the Age of Aquarius, the Christ Maitreya. And so that is a signature star. Again, an announcing star, as was the Star of Bethlehem. So yes, I think it all correlates, but again, there are many different approaches to the ideas, and depending on the consciousness and the point of reference of anybody thinking about it. But certainly together they emphasize the time of the year is a sacred time, and people do look for the light, and they do anticipate revelation, no matter where they are or who they are. And I think this time of the year, so many people find Christmas or the holidays very depressing, and so it's a tender and sensitive time of the year, and so people are looking for revelation, or however they want to pronounce the words. They're looking for succor, for comfort, for some, for the light, for some notice or some sign that there's a purpose for living.
Now, you talked about the Age of Aquarius. Maybe you could talk a bit more about the different qualities of Aquarius that are coming in, that are affecting all of us, versus what we've known and what's been familiar over the last 2,000 years with the energy of Pisces, and how that's affecting what's going on today.
Right. Well, most of us of I don't know, Generation Z or maybe older than Generation Z, have been conditioned to revere individuality and to aspire to idealism. And those are the great gifts of the energies of Pisces, which of course came to fruition in Palestine 2,000 years ago. So that was what the gifts of the Age of Pisces have produced. We have a whole country that is based on, at least outwardly, on the Piscean ideals of rugged individualism and idealism, and so that has been a good thing. But now the age has come to Aquarius, which generates the energies of right human relationships, of synthesis and brotherhood. And if you think about it, you can see how those two, as they try to mix, which is where we have been, those energies have produced people who are very rugged individuals and also very idealistic. And now we have all of this mixing going on. And when people try to force their ideals, my way or the highway, into a situation that is going to be based and is already being based on right human relationships, you get a chaos, you get war even between those two approaches to social, economic, political, even religious institutions. So our institutions that were built with the Piscean ideals of individualism and idealism are failing. And you can see it in the political discourse, or whatever you want to call it, that we have. And always in the press, they're saying, well, you know, our institutions have worked. They are working, as if to force them to be still working just because the press says they're still working, or the politicians still say they're working. But anyone who watches the news on a broad platform can see that the rumblings of the Aquarian future are going to destabilize even further those institutions, at least over the next several years.
Yes, you know, it's we have had, speaking of politics here in Georgia, for the first time we have overtime elections. So we actually have two Senate races that are really the balance of power are hinging on these two Senate races. And you don't typically see two Senate races in the same state at the same time. But what happened was one of the senators retired, and Kelly Loeffler, who's a Republican, was nominated by the governor. And of course, she had to have a special election to see if she could still finish out his term. I guess he's got a couple or three more years left. I don't know exactly how long. And then there's somebody else that's running against the incumbent, David Perdue. And it's interesting, you talked about rugged individualism and a whole country based on that ideal, right? But I couldn't believe it, but the Republican view of this election now is vote for David Perdue, vote for Kelly Loeffler to save America.
Yeah, that old America.
If you don't vote for them, you're voting against America, you know.
Yes.
And you know, the Democrats, I mean, obviously I don't agree with everything the Democrats are up to either, but you know, at the same time, they have a little bit more, just a slightly little bit more progressive view, I think, than the Republicans do, right? And therefore maybe have a little bit more, manifesting a little bit more of that Aquarian energy than the Piscean energy. I mean, it still is an intermixed of it, you know, nobody's 100% zero, right?
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, so you're saying if I vote for a Democrat, I'm voting against America because they want health care? I mean, it's just
isn't that amazing? Yeah.
So it's a myth, the American myth, you know, of it. I remember Ben used to always talk about the American dream. He goes, what is the American dream? And nobody really had a real answer for him, right?
And for who?
Yeah, and for who? You know, he would always kind of pose that question, you know, being from Scotland and then through Britain the way he was. He's like, what? You know, but so let me ask you this question. Let's just talk about direct politics here for a second. Now, you wanted to keep it kind of positive. This might take a little turn for the negative until we can bring it into the positive. So what do you think is going to happen on January 20th? Do you think that Trump's going to walk away and go quietly into the onion night, or is he going to create a ruckus on the way out, or
I don't know.
Light a match?
I don't know. I would hope that he would, do the decent thing and pack up his bags and go off. I expect that will be the case. I don't know enough of this kind of constitutional history to remember at the moment any precedent for. There may have been some precedent that would do that, but I can't imagine that would be the case. I do get the sense, though, that he is very upset with something that probably has gone on forever in American elections, and that is, stuff in the ballot box and all the things that go on here. We here in Texas, many people here fondly remember LBJ, and the fact that a lot of dead people voted for him when he was running. So, it's again come to a serious question: how much are Americans going to tolerate the good old boy, so to speak, way of doing things? And as they used to say about Lyndon here, they say, well, he was a crook, but he was our crook. And so I would honestly, that's what they hold him close to his heart, to their hearts. And so But you know, that has to stop. That is a exclusive. That's a very Piscean way of operating when the end justifies the means, which I think is another principle that's come into question now. The end does not justify the means. And in the Age of Aquarius, where unity is going to be the ultimate result of the energies of Aquarius, which I must say is not going to be done in 4 years, 8 years, probably not in our lifetime. It's the ages of 2,500 years long. So it's going to be a while. And we may all come back in another lifetime and see that it has advanced some, I hope. But the end does not justify the means anymore. And I think the people who are raising their voices against whatever networks they feel have created such injustice in this country, I think are going to get only stronger. So I think no matter who you are, if you're a high-level Democrat in Washington, you're going to hear those voices. We have AOC who's knocking at the door now, a very articulate and very charismatic personality, and a woman of color. And so, you know, you can see this if you have a very broad outlook. And that's the whole purpose for, I think, thinking about the changes of the age. If you have a very broad outlook, you can see that it is only natural that we have what we have right now. The world is not going to end. It's a process that's underway, and that if people would just listen, open up their minds a little bit and listen to their own hearts, and understand the principle of the common needs of humanity, I think we can get through this without too much trouble, and hopefully that will begin with no trouble at the inauguration and entering the new president in the White House.
Yeah, for me personally, this isn't going to be over until he's physically out of the White House.
Well, everyone will be watching. That's true.
Yes, that is right. I know. The Ben's Master talked about in the future the system of government that the United States has will even be different, meeting more of the needs of the people, being more Aquarian in terms of their approach, especially in terms of a president being a single person. You know, it would eventually be a group of wise individuals kind of steering, you know, and I've often wondered what would be the catalyst to get that kind of change in America. And to be honest with you, of a coup where they're talking about martial law and those kind of things could be something where it could bring about that kind of change that quickly. You know, I didn't think I'd ever see something like that in my lifetime, let alone.
Yeah, that would be terrible, though. It would be so divisive. I mean, it would just be. It would be totally against any Aquarian way. I rather think that the energies of Aquarius are changing hearts and minds. Plus, you know, people have short memories. If they're not pounded with certain facts or certain opinions every day in the news, they go back to chopping wood, carrying water. You know, they have kids, they have stuff to do. And the energies work slowly, but the consciousness is where the change is already happening, and I don't think we can stop that, certainly not in the long haul. And, gosh, I hope there would be no warlike scenarios coming. That would be divisive.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Gee.
But they're talking about, I mean, there's been reports coming out of the White House that they're seriously discussing. Yeah, oh yeah. And so, not saying it would ever happen, but at the same time, it's just kind of like, I remember saying months and months and months ago, this is not going to be over. If he loses the election, it's not going to be over until January 20th. And then we'll know for sure.
Well, I agree with that. I think we will not know till the very last minute, but I just can't imagine that it would be at this stage of the game, that it would be such a divisive thing. It would just be awful.
I know for myself, you know, you knew Benjamin Creme longer than me, and perhaps knew him better than I did, you know, but I miss his perspective on things, and I really would love to hear his perspective on what's going on in the United States right now, what's going on with the coronavirus and so forth, and how that's tying into all these things, because he had a very clear perspective on what was going on, but yet saw the bigger picture. Like you said, you know, this broad perspective, you know, he had a very broad but yet simplistic perspective on things. It was quite unusual from what you would get from somebody, you know, and then yet, so yeah, I know I miss him terribly in that regard. And for times like this, it's like, I wish we could just, you know, read it in the back of Sharon National magazine, like, what's going to happen in the election? You know, what's going to happen with the coronavirus? How long is it going to last? You know.
That's right.
But,
well, you know, he always described America as an adolescent country. We are very young in the age of countries, and he said, you know, America is big, strong, flexing its muscles, but it's just an adolescent country. That doesn't mean we can't do and haven't done tremendous harm across the world. But he had hope for America, because he talked about America finally finding its soul, which is the energy of love, wisdom, as the second ray, soul of America, the personality of America is, he talked about the sixth ray, which is the ray of devotion, which is the Piscean way, you know, my way, saving the world for democracy, when we were really just saving it for ourselves. But he had a perspective of hope for America, and that through the pain and suffering and the karma that America, I think, is even now beginning to go through, that eventually the soul of America will shine forth, and it will become what he called the light of the world. It was interesting because he talked about, and I think the Alice Bailey material talks about, every country has its purpose. So the light of the world would be based on maybe America's inventiveness, its love of humanity, its love of maybe democracy, will shine forth eventually. So the key is to keep body and bone together until that happens, which I think is why Maitreya is here and the masters are here, to make sure that process continues and continues on a more rapid scale than otherwise would be the case. Because Maitreya is the teacher for Aquarius, so he understands and guides humanity in the best way to handle these energies. We can't stop those energies. They are given. We're going to have to learn to live together, to learn about and act and live the brotherhood that is the only way for humanity to survive.
So, real quick before we go, since I'm the one asking questions and I'm not taking other people's questions, I'm gonna throw you a curveball that I want to see what your answer is. I'm curious. What is, and you don't have any specific insight or special insights onto this. I'm just trying to get Betsy Whitfill's opinion on this. What is your opinion? What is your view on 2021 for the world? What do you think life's going to be like this time over Christmas next year?
I think people will not be in each other's faces too much. I think we will be. Yes, I think metaphorically and physically. I think we will be a little more wise in our in the face activities. I think people are tired of the confrontation. They are tired of the restrictions that have put on them. But I think people have rediscovered their homes and their families. And I think maybe we don't see much about it now, but I think they will. People are rediscovering what it means to be in relationships again, starting with family relationships, which we've lost for quite a while now.
Yeah, and even the what is it, the purchasing of useless things that are shiny,
Yeah.
I had an epiphany earlier in the year, right when COVID hit, and the revelation was this: you can't wipe your ass with a brand new television set, because everyone was so focused on getting toilet paper, right?
Yeah.
That nobody was going to Best Buy and buying big TVs, because it was like, what's that going to do for you, right? If you have no Charmin at your house, I mean, you're screwed. So it really, Ben talked about for years, he talked about the wilderness experience that the United States is going to go through. And really, I think what we're going through now, I think we've been over this for the last few months, is that wilderness experience. And what did he say would happen at the end of it?
Well, that Americans would discover the American soul, that the energy of love, wisdom would finally have an outlet in our civic lives and in our familial relationships. And as difficult as it's been, I think your example is absolutely perfect. Other people have said, well, gee, I could buy a new dress, but there's nowhere to wear it,
I mean, I haven't literally been in a restaurant since February. I mean, I've gone to the drive-thru a couple times, but for the most part, I've just been eating at home. I mean, I can't tell you how much money I've saved this year. It's been great, and I know that the restaurant industry is really hurting, and it's the second biggest industry next to the governmental industry in this country. But, I think that in the meantime, I see this domino effect that hasn't really hit yet. And it'll be interesting to see what Joe Biden does with this, because I think it's going to fall on him, in his lap, but with over the past, few weeks where our current president's been kind of persona non grata in terms of the crises that are going on out there, it'll be interesting to see, this, but I agree with you. I think that through the suffering, it's only going to be through suffering, unfortunately, we're going to discover our soul. And it's
true. And how little we really need.
Yeah.
How little we really need on an everyday basis.
I started every video now talking about the principle of sharing and relating it back to the Marshall Plan. And I should have done this years ago, right? But I just had this thought now. I mean, it's a work in progress,
Sure.
But the according to, I know, Benjamin Crime's master, right? The only time that the United States really ever manifested its soul, or its soul was really manifest, was during the Marshall Plan. So imagine, I was say if we just instituted that globally, I mean, we could end hunger tomorrow, probably.
And the world is ready for that. The world would respond. It's only in this little bubble we call DC, where the past is kept alive. It's kind of like Weekend at Bernie's. We just keep doing it, because it works.
That's funny. Yeah, I know. That's funny. It's a funny analogy. No, it is. One of the things that I'm hoping happens this time, I don't know if it's going to happen in 2021, but are you familiar with the Spanish poet Federico Lorca?
Yes, yeah.
And he said the greatest spiritual explosion, he said you can't imagine the greatest spiritual explosion will happen when hunger ends.
Yes.
The revolution, the spiritual revolution that would happen because of that. And to me, if we could just accomplish that in 2021, that will be the start of amazing things to come.
Jumpstart everything. Yes, it would. And I think people may have a little bit of that experience when, again, stuck in your neighborhood, you realize that the people that you may have had funny feelings about, or not known quite what they're about, but when you can't shake hands, but when you see each other as who you are, fellow human beings with the same problems, the same hopes and desires, it's like an explosion right there. It's a mini explosion of love. that that people can experience every day. And when you, as you say, when you put that on a global scale by just ending hunger, people are ready for that. They are ready. All we have to do is somebody has to light a match, to put it in a Piscean way, I suppose.
Well, to cross beliefs, the Imam Mahdi is here for that very reason. You know, the Kalki Avatar is here for just that reason.
Yes.
You know.
There you go.
So,
there you go.
But Betsy, it is always a pleasure, and don't be a stranger. I do want you coming back, and we're going to talk some more about some different things and to add to the story. If you're willing to come back on, I'd love to have you. Awesome.
Okay, Gary.
Well, it is great, and if I don't talk to you, have a wonderful Christmas holiday, and we'll talk probably after Christmas sometime.
You too, Gary. Take care.
Thanks, Betsy.
Bye.
And as always, take action. Help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos. Have a great day.